Hey guys, welcome back to more HOAkaren Reddit stories. In this Ripestories video, most people back down when a power-tripping HOA president threatens to slap a lien on their house. But when this neighborhood dictator parked her SUV in my driveway to block me in, she had no idea that she was playing a game she had already lost. When she dialed 911 to get me arrested, things took a turn she never saw coming. Let's dive right into the video. And the first Reddit story is titled HOAkaren called 911 when I blocked my own driveway, unaware that I'm a sheriff deputy. So to get this out, I have a house out by a lake. It's a peaceful spot, or at least it used to be, before the neighborhood next door expanded its borders in its own mind. My property, though, is completely independent. It sits on a nice chunk of land right on the water, and the road leading to it is technically a public easement that passes alongside a relatively new HOA housing development. That development is governed by a notoriously aggressive homeowner association, and I'm not part of it. To be clear, I never signed a single piece of paperwork and my deed has absolutely no covenants attached to it, and I paid off the land years ago already. To give you some background on me though, I work as a sheriff deputy in the county. It is a demanding job, and because of that, my lake property is my sanctuary. When I'm off the clock, I want to throw on some old cargo shorts, a faded t-shirt, and just sit on my porch looking at the water. I deliberately keep my work life separate from my home life. I do not park my marked cruiser in my driveway when I'm off. I leave it at the substation or keep it tucked away in the garage if I ever have to bring it home, which is rare because I usually drive my old reliable F-150 truck. The trouble started about a year ago when a woman moved into the HOA development right at the corner where the main road turns into the easement leading towards my property. For the sake of this story, we can just call her the HOA president because she quickly badgered her way into that position. It didn't take long for her to turn her attention towards me. The first interaction was just insane. I was out by my mailbox, which sits near the edge of the easement road, clearing out some overgrown brush, and she marched down the asphalt. She looked at my gravel driveway, looked at my truck, and then looked at me like I was an eyesore that needed to be scrubbed away. "Excuse me," she said, her tone immediately sharp and demanding. "Are you the owner of this property?" "I am," I replied, leaning on my loppers. "Can I help you with something?" "You need to clear this gravel and pave this driveway immediately," she said, tapping her clipboard. "The community guidelines clearly state that all driveways must be poured concrete or stamped asphalt. Furthermore, your truck is parked within view of the main corridor, which is a violation of our vehicle storage policy." I stared at her for a second, trying to process the sheer confidence radiating from her. "Ma'am, I don't know who you are, but my property is not part of your neighborhood. I'm not in the HOA." She let out a short, scoffing laugh. "Everyone around the lake is subject to the standard of the community. And by the way, I'm the president of the association board, and I assure you, your property falls under our visual jurisdiction. If your property looks like a dump, it lowers the property values of the actual homes in our face. Visual jurisdiction is not a legal concept," I told her calmly. "Just to be clear, my land is private and independent. I don't owe you dues, I don't follow your rules, and my gravel driveway is staying exactly how it is. Have a nice day." I turned back to my brush, assuming that would just be the end of it. Normal people usually realize they have made a mistake and back off, but she was not a normal person. She was deeply entitled, and my refusal to bow down to her clipboard authority seemed to trigger something deep inside of her. Over the next few months, the harassment escalated from verbal warnings to outright nonsense. I would find dozens of envelopes tucked into my mailbox, and they were filled with printed notices claiming that I owed hundreds of dollars in unpaid community assessments, fees for unapproved landscaping, and fines for parking a commercial-sized pickup truck out there in the open. Every single one of them, of course, went straight into my wood stove. I never responded, and I never gave her the satisfaction of seeing me upset. When I saw her patrolling the edge of my property line in her golf cart, glaring at me while I grilled on my deck, I would just raise my drink and smile at her. My complete lack of anger seemed to drive her absolutely insane. She tried to corner me a second time when I was loading a couple of kayaks into the back of my truck. She pulled up in her golf cart, blocking the edge of my driveway entrance. "You've been ignoring the official notices," she said, crossing her arms. "The board is preparing to place a lien on this property if you don't clear your balance. We take community compliance very seriously here." Well, you can try to file whatever you want, I said, tying down the straps on the kayaks, but considering your organization has zero legal authority over this parcel, any fraudulent lien you attempt to file will just result in a very expensive lesson for your board. And by the way, I've told you before and I'll tell you one last time, leave me alone. Stop coming onto my property and stop putting trash in my mailbox. We'll see about that, she snapped. We got ways of enforcing community standards, whether you think you're above them or not. You're an arrogant man, but you will learn to respect the chuckles of this neighborhood. I just chuckled, hopped into my F-150 and drove right past her, forcing her to back her golf cart up into the grass. By the way, guys, I wish OP drove his F-150 over that damn golf cart. By the way, also, if you had a neighbor like this that constantly harassed you and put random crap into your mailbox, how would you have reacted? How would you have dealt with her? Also, is that even legal that some random person who pretends to be the authority in the community constantly puts random stuff into your mailbox? Isn't that a crime or something? Anyway, let me know in the comments what you would have done. And also, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you so much for your support. So yeah, I honestly thought she was just full of hot air. People like her love to threaten legal action and liens because it works on scared homeowners who don't know any better. They rely on intimidation. But since I deal with actual lawbreakers and neighborhood disputes for a living, I knew she could not do a damn thing to me legally, and then she decided to change her tactics. Since she could not legally fine me into submission, she decided to start physically disrupting my life. It started on a weekend. I was planning to head into town to pick up some lumber for a repair on my dock. I walked out my front door, keys in hand, and stopped dead in my tracks. There, parked right in the middle of my gravel driveway, completely blocking my path to the main road, was a shiny mid-sized SUV. I walked down the driveway and looked through the windows, and the car was empty. I looked up towards the main road and sure enough, I spotted her standing on the sidewalk near her own house, pretending to check her mail while watching me. She had intentionally parked her vehicle on my private property to block me in, probably thinking she was staging some sort of protest or asserting dominance over the easement, but instead of getting angry, I walked back inside my house, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and sat down at my kitchen table because I had plenty of time. If she wanted to play a game of chicken with vehicles, she had picked the wrong person. I did not have to be at work for another couple days actually, and I had a freezer full of food. I decided to just wait her out. About an hour later, I saw her walk down the road, approach her vehicle, get in, and drive away. She had clearly been waiting for me to come out, screaming and begging her to move, and when I didn't even acknowledge her presence, she got bored, but she didn't stop there. A few days later it happened again, but this time it was later in the afternoon. I was getting ready to leave for an evening shift at the sheriff's department. I was still in my civilian clothes, a pair of jeans and a dark hoodie, planning to change into my full uniform. Once I arrived at the substation, I walked outside and there was her SUV again, parked squarely across the narrowest section of my driveway, right between two large oak trees. There was absolutely no way to drive around it without messing up my lawn a bit, but it was worth it. I looked up the hill. She was not standing by her mailbox this time. She was sitting on her front porch holding a mug, watching me through a pair of binoculars. This was the moment she crossed the line from a neighborhood nuisance to a direct hindrance to my job. I could not be late for shift briefings, and I certainly was not gonna let an entitled bully play games with my livelihood. So I walked down to the edge of my driveway, climbed into the cabin of my F-150 and started the engine. I didn't back down. Instead, I pulled my truck forward until my front bumper was like 2 inches away from her driver's side door, so I completely hammed her vehicle in, backing my truck up just enough to angle it diagonally across the remainder of the exit, and now her SUV was trapped. She could not pull forward because of the thick oak trees and my stone retaining wall, and she couldn't back out because the massive back end of my truck was completely blocking the path. I put the truck in park, pulled the emergency brake and locked the doors and walked back up to my porch. I sat down on my porch swing, picked up my phone and checked my messages. I knew exactly what was about to happen and I wanted to have a front row seat for it. It took less than 3 minutes for her to realize what I had done. Through the trees I saw her drop her binoculars, march down her front steps and stomp down the easement road like a tyrant whose authority had been challenged. Her face was bright red and she was practically foaming at the mouth by the time she reached my gravel driveway. "What do you think you're doing?" she screamed, pointing an angry finger at my truck. "You blocked my car. Move this monstrosity right now." I remained seated on the swing, completely unbothered by any of this. Why would I move my truck? It's parked on my own private property.
"You're blocking me from leaving,"
she shrieked, stepping further into my yard.
"This is illegal. You cannot trap someone's vehicle."
"Correct, you cannot trap someone's vehicle," I said, leaning back. Which makes it very ironic considering that you parked your car in my driveway first to trap me. I'm just utilizing my own land to park my own truck. If your car happens to be in the way of my parking spot, I mean, that sounds like a personal you problem.
"I'm the president of the HOA,"
she yelled, her voice cracking with pure rage.
"I have every right to monitor this area and park wherever is necessary to conduct community business. You are intentionally harassing me because you refuse to pay your dues. Move this truck this instant or you will be very sorry."
"I'm not moving it," I said flatly. "I have no reason to, and I think maybe I will just leave it right there for the rest of the weekend. Maybe even the whole week, how about that? It's a great parking spot." She stared at me, her eyes wide with shock. She was completely unaccustomed to people saying no to her. In her little HOA kingdom, everyone bowed down to her threats because they did not want the drama. She honestly believed that her title gave her supreme authority over the laws of the state.
"Fine,"
she shouted, pulling her phone out of her pocket with an aggressive jerk.
"You think you can play games with me, huh? You think you're above the law? We will see what happens when the real authorities get here. I'm calling the cops and I'm gonna have you arrested for unlawful confinement and ground theft auto. They will tow this garbage truck of yours to the impound lot."
"Yeah, go right ahead," I said, gesturing towards her phone. "Call them, and in fact make sure that you tell them exactly where you are and what you did." And yeah, she did not hesitate. She furiously dialed 3 digits and pressed the phone to her ear. She turned her back to me, pacing back and forth on my gravel, waiting for the dispatcher to answer. When they did, her voice instantly transformed into a high-pitched, trembling wail of artificial victimhood. And yeah guys, that is exactly what HOA Karens are absolutely excelling at. Anyway,
"Yeah, hello, I need immediate police assistance at the lake property next to the development,"
she cried out, putting on a masterful performance.
"I'm being held hostage by a hostile resident. He has completely blocked my vehicle with a massive truck, and he's refusing to let me leave. He's threatening me. I feel completely unsafe. Please send some officers right away before he gets violent."
She listened to the dispatcher for a moment, nodding aggressively.
"Yes, I'm at the end of the access road. Hurry."
She clicked the phone off, turned around, and gave me a look of pure, triumphant malice. She truly believed she had just won. She thought the flashing lights would arrive, handcuff me, and validate her delusions of grandeur. "The police are on their way," she said, crossing her arms and smirking.
"I hope you enjoy spending the night in a jail cell. This is what happens when you disrespect the community."
"I appreciate the update," I said, taking a sip of my coffee. "I'll just wait here with you." We stood there in silence for about 10 minutes, and she kept pacing by her trapped SUV, occasionally checking her watch and glancing up the road, eager for her rescuers to arrive. I just sat on my swing, enjoying the afternoon breeze, and I knew exactly which units were on duty in this sector today. Eventually, 2 police cruisers turned down the easement road, and the moment the doors opened, the HOA president let out a dramatic gasp and ran towards the first cruiser, waving her hands in the air like a castaway signaling a passing ship.
"Over here, thank goodness you're here,"
she wailed, rushing up to the driver's side.
"He's right there, that's the man. He trapped my car, he's been harassing our neighborhood for months and he refused to let me leave my vehicle."
"You need to arrest this guy right now." The deputy who stepped out of the first car was a seasoned veteran named X. We had worked together on the night shift for over 3 years, and he took one look at the situation, then looked at my truck, looked at me sitting on the porch, and then looked down at the hysterical woman in front of him. The second deputy, a younger guy named Q, stepped out of the other cruiser, adjusting his duty belt. He looked around the property, immediately recognizing my F-150 and my house. A massive grin broke out across his face. He walked right past the HOA president, completely ignoring her frantic pointing, and walked towards the porch. "Hey, look who it is," X said, raising a hand in a greeting. "What's going on, deputy? Having some driveway trouble on your day off?" The HOA president froze. The words seemed to physically strike her. Her mouth fell open and her arms dropped to her sides, and the triumphant smirk completely vanished from her face. She looked like she had just watched a ghost walk out of the woods.
"Deputy?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "What do you mean, deputy?"
Q walked up beside X, nodding at me. Afternoon, man. We got a frantic dispatch call about an active hostage situation down here. Afternoon, boys, I said, finally standing up from the porch swing and walking down the steps. I pulled my badge and my department identification credentials out of my pocket, holding them out so the HOA president could get a very clear, up-close look at them. Sorry to drag you guys all the way out here for this. As you can see, there's no hostage situation. She looked at the badge, then looked at me, and then looked at the two uniformed deputies who were currently treating me like a trusted colleague. The absolute shock on her face was worth every single second of her previous harassment. Her skin went completely pale, and she looked like she wanted the earth to open up and swallow her whole.
You're a sheriff deputy? She stammered, her voice trembling. But you drive that truck and you wear those clothes. You don't have a police car here.
I don't bring my work home with me, ma'am, I told her, keeping my voice perfectly calm and professional, but I'm indeed a deputy with the county sheriff's office, and the very same office you just called to report a fake violent crime. X then turned around, looking bored as he pulled out his notepad. Ma'am, your HOA stops where the county road ends. You walked onto private property and parked your car in a private driveway to block a homeowner. Around here, we just call that criminal trespass.
I was just…
She stuttered, her previous confidence completely evaporating now. She was looking around wildly, looking for any excuse to salvage the situation.
He doesn't pay his HOA dues. He is violating the community's standards. I was trying to enforce the rules of the neighborhood.
Is this property part of your subdivision? Q asked, pulling out a county map overview on his digital tablet.
Well, no, not technically, she mumbled, looking down at her shoes. But it is right next to it. Visually, it affects our property values. I have a responsibility as the board president to protect our community.
You parked your car in his driveway legally, Q clarified, looking at her like she was completely out of her mind. He has every right to park his vehicle wherever he pleases on his own land, and you trapped yourself the moment you decided to commit criminal trespass to play the neighborhood dictator.
But he blocked me in,
she cried, trying to play the victim card one last time, pointing a shaking finger at my truck.
Look at his truck, he wouldn't let me leave. That is false imprisonment.
He parked his truck on his own property, Q countered, leaning in slightly. If my partner here wants to press charges for trespass and making a false report, you're gonna ride in the back of my cruiser today. Filing a false police report is a serious misdemeanor. It wastes department resources and takes deputies away from actual emergencies. You caught in an active hostage situation because someone parked next to you on their own land. The HOA president looked like she was about to cry. The realization that she had absolutely no leverage, no authority, and had just called the actual police on a sheriff deputy who knew the law inside and out was crashing down on her. She gasped and clutching her clipboard to her chest like a shield.
Please, no. I was just trying to do my job for the neighborhood. I didn't mean any harm.
I stepped forward, looking her dead in the eye. So Karen, here's what's gonna happen, I told her. I'm choosing not to press formal charges today because I don't want to deal with the paperwork, and frankly, I think you've learned your lesson. But if I ever see your face on my property again, or if you touch my driveway with your vehicle, I'm having my shift partners hook you up for trespassing and harassment on the spot. Do we understand each other? She nodded rapidly, her head moving so fast I thought her neck might snap.
Yeah, I understand. I'm so sorry. It won't happen again.
Good, I said. Now I'm going to move my truck, and you're going to get into your car back out of my driveway, and you're going to go back to your neighborhood, and you're going to leave me alone for the rest of the time you live there, okay? I walked over to my F-150, climbed inside, started it up, and backed it up towards my garage, clearing the path. The HOA president did not waste a single second. She practically ran to her SUV, scrambled into the driver's seat, started the engine, and threw it into reverse. She backed down my gravel driveway so fast she almost hit one of the oak trees before swinging out onto the main road and speeding back towards her development. She didn't even look back. Ever since that afternoon, my lake house has been the peaceful sanctuary it was always meant to be. The HOA president completely stopped her patrols near my property line, the letters stopped, the fines stopped, and the threats of liens vanished into thin air. And yeah, she finally found out what happens when you try to bully someone who actually knows the law. And yeah guys, now for my opinion about this story. So this story basically shows why you never let someone's imaginary authority go unchallenged for too long. She probably got used to steamrolling regular homeowners who did not have the time, money, or confidence to push back, but then she met the one guy on the road who knew exactly where the lines were. I mean, both literally and legally. Honestly though, I feel bad for everyone living in that HOA. If she was doing this to a non-HOA neighbor, imagine what she was doing to actual neighbors or members over mailbox colors and trash cans being visible for an extra 13 minutes or something. The deputy had the option to walk away from this nonsense because he was not under her rules, but the poor people inside the HOA probably get a certified letter every time a garden hose looks too relaxed. So yeah, I really feel for these people, to be honest, even though they knowingly bought into an HOA. And now we will read a comment from Reddit. This one said, "She repeatedly harassed you, sent fake fines and threatened liens she had no authority to file, and she trespassed in your property and blocked your driveway. I mean, at that point, she was not just being annoying, she was actually interfering with your ability to leave your own home. You did not damage her car, you didn't threaten her, you didn't even drag her out of the SUV or do anything violent. Although that would have sounded fun to drag her out of the SUV. You simply parked your truck on your own land after she chose to park there first. The fact that you're a deputy does not make her behavior less stupid. If anything, it just means that she picked the worst possible target for her fake authority routine. She tried to weaponize the police against you and accidentally called your co-workers. That is what karma is." And the next one is an amazing malicious compliance story which is titled, "I altered my uniform to comply with the dress code in my employee handbook." So back when I, now a 37F, was younger with a lot of attitude and a loud mouth, I worked for a nice Italian restaurant in my hometown. I did not have a single issue with management until 7 months into my employment when a male manager joined the team. He was a bit of a misogynist, he would make backhanded comments about women, and he only had issues with the female staff. He also wrote me up for some ridiculous reasons, one being opening the back dock door too hard when it was a heavy steel door that you had to put some muscle into to open, and he fired another lady who was pregnant for asking to be put into a section closest to the kitchen, and by the way, she filed a lawsuit and won it too. Well, one day I walked into work and he pulled me into the office immediately and presented me with a write-up slip. It was because I was not wearing a belt. The dress code stated, "If pants have belt loops, a belt must be worn." So yeah, okay, my uniform that day did not comply with the dress code. The issue was that I hadn't worn a belt in 7 months, while he and the other managers never mentioned it, and in my opinion, the appropriate thing to say here would have been, "Hey, I see you have not been wearing a belt and we haven't been enforcing it. Dress code says that you actually must wear a belt if you have belt loops. I will give you X amount of days to purchase one before I start enforcing this." However, I just got a straight write-up. So I went home and cut off all the belt loops off all of my work pants, and the next day, immediately upon walking in, he asked where my belt was, and I pointed to my pants and said, "Where are my belt loops?" The employee handbook stated, "If there are belt loops, but I no longer had belt loops." Let's just say, it did not make him like me anymore, but I felt like a hero standing up to him in such a petty manner. And yeah guys, I guess OP found a loophole. And yeah, I will see myself out. Please check out my playlist and I will see you again tomorrow.